Here we got a 12-year-old BMW that isn't running right. No surprise there, it's running like crap. Check engine lights on, so let's scan it. Field scanner up to the data port, and what does it say? P0306. Cylinder number 6 misfire detected. Now a misfire in any one cylinder can be a whole bunch of things. It can be the ignition system, the fuel system, a blowing head gasket, a bad valve, all kinds of stuff. But always start basically. We're gonna go to number 6 and see what's going on there. Now being a BMW, you can't see the spark plug, so we gotta take this plastic crap off. In this case, it's a 5mm hex head. We'll take these stupid things off. Oh, it makes them look so great, doesn't it? It just makes it a pain to work on. Plain stupidity, some of these designs. You gotta take half of this stuff apart to access it to get it off. Another brilliant German design. So we'll take these clips off. Some more over here. Get this out of the way. Then we can slide the cover up and get to the spark plugs up here. And the number 6 is hiding way back here, so we'll check that first. And now you can see why I think so little of BMWs, modern ones. Look, all plastic crap. This is all plastic crap. You gotta pull the little line off the coil, and then it's theoretically just pulls out. But these are stuck because they're 12 years old, and they're gonna be cows to get out. Plastic, old age, heat on the engine. And then the stupid cover on top of it to hold the heat in even more, so the plastic retains the heat and cracks even more. Let's hope nothing breaks when we take it off, but don't be surprised if a bunch of this plastic crap starts snapping off in your hands. You'll just have to replace it then. You gotta pull the coils up. Not an easy thing to do. It's all plastic and it may crack, and you're just gonna have to buy a new ignition coil if it does. My trick is to get a big pry bar, start to pry them out. Because they're sitting in there. There's no bolt holding them in like a better made Toyota where the coils are bolted on. These are just placed in. But that rubber and plastic, hey, it's been on there for 12 years, so it's often really hard to get off. And you'll often break stuff, but here goes nothing. We'll try some prying and praying. Praying and prying. Getting a little looser. Still won't come out though. Now it is easier to work on the front one, so I got the front one out, and there's a point to this. If I ever do get the back number 6 one off without breaking it, what I'm gonna do is check the spark plug, see if the spark plug's okay, and then I'm gonna put the number 2 coil here on number 6 and number 6 on number 2. And if the misfire moves to number 2, then we'll know it's just an ignition coil. It's as simple as that when you only have one misfire for one cylinder. If you finally get the spark plug ignition coil off, you'll see they have weird spark plugs. Typical BMW crap. You see, they're not regular hex heads, they got these crenulations. But fortunately, if you have a 14mm socket, it does fit over it. You do not have to go to BMW to buy a fancy socket. A plain old 14mm socket will work to get it off. Of course, a crenulated one works better, but here's a plain old regular hex one. You wiggle it, it goes right on. It'll hold it and take it off. You don't have to buy that special tool. But you gotta have a 14mm thin wall deep socket or you'll never get the stupid thing out. It's not a regular size spark plug. Now with a ton of wiggling and prying and then wiggling to get it off, because of course there's no working room in the back of the engine, out comes the stupid number 6 ignition coil. There it is. Now of course it could be a bad spark plug, so I'm going to take that spark plug out and put a new one in just in case. Now even that's a chore. Not much working room, and I've had to put 3 different size extensions in to get it deep enough, but it seems to be coming loose. And yes, I can turn it with my bare hands now. A lot of work. Voila, finally. And as you can see here, I had to have various wiggling extensions. So I put it in with just a short one. Then when that falls in, you put this on top so you can get the socket and get your ratchet to take it off. But then when you pull it out, it won't come out. So you got to pull it out part way, then take off that end, then get the rest with the spark plug. Now, it doesn't look horrendous, but all the work on this, I'm not taking a chance. Maybe it's bad electrically inside, so I'm just going to replace it with a new one. Just be sure to replace it with the same plug. These are both Bosch plugs. Now, we'll tighten the new spark plug in. No working room, of course. In this case, I'm using the stubby ratchet because there's more room for tightening up quicker. It still takes a while, but you can see the stubby one you can turn fast. Then for the final part, use the big one. And now comes the logical part. This is the number 6 ignition coil. I'm going to put that on number 2 and put number 2 on number 6. Then when we drive it, if the code goes to number 2, you'll know it was the coil that caused the problem in the whole place. You don't want to guess at these things. They're pretty expensive on BMWs. So before I forget, I'm going to put the number 6 on a number 2 right now. In it goes. They go in a lot easier than they come out. They just plug in a hole and then the connector just snaps in and you lock it with the top. Then we got to do it in the back. I can't film that, there's no room, but it's the same process. Then we use a scan tool to erase the codes. As you can see, codes remaining 0. And start it up. Just don't forget to put the air filter back on. Make sure that's all tight. Well, here goes nothing. Well, hopefully something. Now we'll take it for a spin and see what happens. Well, that didn't take long. The check engine light already's come back on. So let's see what the magic computer says. And magically enough, it now says P0302, cylinder number 2, misfire. Hooray! We didn't fix it yet, but now we know it's the ignition coil. Because we put the number 6 ignition coil on a number 2, and the misfire moved from number 6 to number 2. So we know that caused bad. We'll go put a coil in it. So we get the brand new coil and swap out number 2 again. So this time we'll just move this out of the way a little, unplug it, out it comes. And here goes the new one, back in the hole. Plug it in, make sure it's lined up right, and snap it in place. There we go. Put the stupid bolts back on. Ridiculous covers, I don't know why they even bother. And this time we should have better luck. Sounds a lot better already. No more of that backfiring. Well, we gotta take it for a road test anyway. And as you can see now, it's idling smooth, but watch, when you step on the gas, it goes. No more hesitation. Now in the past, finding oil leaks was a really messy, pain in the rear end job. You'd find the oily area, and in this case it's the whole front of the engine. It's all oily here. Then you'd have to clean it off with degreaser. An absolutely no fun job. Let it dry, then drive the car and see where the new leaks are coming from. Not a fun process. I'm lazy. I don't want to do all that work. I don't like cleaning anyways. I hate cleaning stuff. I'm not even going to clean it off to find this leak because thanks to the miracle of fluorescent dye, I just put a little bit of this oil into the engine oil and let it run for 10-15 minutes. Since this is engine oil, we'll go to the oil cap, take it off, and pour a little UV oil in. Whee! You don't need much. Then we start her up and let it run for 10-15 minutes. Plus, if it's a really slow leak, take it on a highway. Get it going 60 for 10-15 minutes. Then bring it back and you'll be able to see that dye. And to make it easier to see, you put on these yellow glasses, ultraviolet lights. This is a multi-function light. This is the ultraviolet ones here, kind of blue tinted stuff. Now here's how it works. I spilled a little bit of the dye here. When I get the yellow sunglasses and put them in front of the camera here, it's now a cool camera with shades. Now you see everything's tinted yellow. And when we shine it on, you can see this stuff glowing. As you can see now, you can see that little green glow there. See, you can see it glowing where the dye comes out. So you look for that green. Then you put the yellow glasses back on your head and get the ultraviolet light and start looking around to see where the green's coming from. And in this case, it's not good news. It's leaking from the head gaskets and the main crank seal. It's throwing oil all over the place from the middle of the engine where the head gasket is and from the seal on the crankshaft. Now in the case of this car, it's a 14-year-old Mercedes V8. So the beginning of the endless money pit scenario Mercedes has already begun. Customer isn't planning on keeping the car all that long. Taking apart the engine, rebuilding it, replacing all the seals in the head gaskets. She's not going to spend those thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to fix where the leak's coming from. We know where it's coming from now. I'm going to put all this AT205 reseal. It can rejuvenate seals. It's worth a try. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just a polymer. There's no solid particles. You just pour it in the engine oil. Take the cap off, in goes the whole bottle. Then you run the engine to circulate it. Now the advantage of using this UV fluorescent dye is obvious. You don't have to clean up the other stuff. The wind's going to blow oil back when you're going forwards. Gravity's going to pull it down. It can go all over the place. With the dye, you can follow the green up to where it starts and know exactly what's leaking. Now granted, it's not one size fits all. There's ultraviolet dye for engine oil, for transmission oil, for power steering oil. There's a special one you can put in the cooling system. It's different than this one, but they make it for cooling systems. So you can put it in the cooling system if you have a leak. They even make an ultraviolet dye you can stick in a gas tank, because gasoline leaks can sometimes be really hard to find. You can smell them, but you can't see them. You'll be able to see them when you put ultraviolet fluorescent dye in. Wherever it's leaking, you're going to see the green coming out. Personally, I always hated looking for oil leaks, because the process of cleaning them all off was a pain in the butt. Then trying to decide, okay, here are some drips, but where are they coming from? Now, you know immediately whether it's something that you want to fix, something you want to live with, or something that says, time to say goodbye to this car. No more guessing. Is this leaking? Is that leaking? Is it something that's serious? Is it something that I can live with? You use an ultraviolet fluorescent dye in any of your oil systems and you'll know exactly where the leak's coming from. And as my father taught me years ago when I was learning how to fix cars in a corner Texaco gas station, don't stop when you find the first leak. There can be numerous leaks, especially in something like this Mercedes that's got 120,000 miles and it's 14 years old. Because in the past, if you saw an obvious oil leak coming out, it's squirting out, okay, you fix it and think that's it. There could be a lot of other hidden leaks. This is going to find all the leaks so you can make a real diagnosis of where all the oil is coming from and not keep coming back saying, well, we missed that one, there's another one, la la la. Because correct diagnosis of a problem is one of the most important things when it comes to fixing cars. And if using something as simple as a little fluorescent dye and a few minutes of looking around can find the problem, I say, thank goodness somebody invented this stuff. Because let's face it, people are visual creatures. If you can actually see a problem, you're going to be able to comprehend it all that much easier. And of course, the entire process, hunting for it, instead of having to clean it all off, just pouring the leak dye in and seeing where the green dye comes out, that's faster by far than even just cleaning the car up alone. Now, when this Maximo was new, it was a $28,000 car. Now it's a 2007. Even the books that generally inflate values say that this thing is worth anywhere from $1,700 to $3,300 today. Now, my customer bought this thing a year ago for $3,500. And the first thing he said to me was, yeah, I wish I would have bought a Toyota instead. To which I responded, yeah, but you're not going to get much of a Toyota for $3,500. I mean, check this car out. It's a nice looking car. Still got a great paint job. White reflects heat, holds up over time. The wheels are still good. Nice lines to it. There's no bashes or anything. It is a nice looking car. I tell people, you want to buy one, buy a new one. Keep it 100,000 miles, you might not have any problems at all. But this baby, now that it's got some mileage on it, got 152,719 miles. And guess what? It's showing its age. It needs quite a bit of work. Now in this case, this baby has 3 catalytic converters and they're going out. It is typical on Nissans. And I've often had people buy the cheaper aftermarket catalytic converters and they still fail the test. If you have to buy 3 cats for this car and you buy OEM factory cats, that's more money than the car's worth. It runs decently most of the time, especially after you put some cat cleaner in the tank. In order to get it legally passed in an inspection, if you live in an area that has emissions inspecting, you'd have to replace those cats, and man, that is one expensive job, and it's typical. They almost always go bad on these Nissan V6 engines when they get mileage like this one. There's like 150 on it. Almost invariably, they're going to go bad. Now, once in a while, they get too clogged up and it really runs bad. When you put the cleaner in, it cleans it out. So let's say you lived in a place like Montana where they don't inspect cars for emissions. You could just keep adding cleaner, you know, and live with that. But if you live in a place where they inspect cars for emissions, especially California, you wouldn't want to touch this car with a 10-foot pole. And you might have noticed I got AC gauges hooked up because the AC system is leaking. That's the reason the guy brought the car in the first place, because it's hot here in Houston and he wanted to see what's wrong with the AC, fill it up, put some dye in, look for big leaks, If I don't find any, just tell them, just keep filling the stupid thing up. Because as it's running, you can hear the compressor rattling a little. You know, at some point, the compressor itself's going to go out. That's a lot of money on one of these. Now, if you don't have to have AC, you don't care. But here in Houston, that's important. Hence, they have extremely low resale value when they're this old. Now, as we look inside, hey, the interior is still in excellent shape. That's how they sell these things. They're comfortable. They handle great. They got a nice Nissan engine and a good suspension system. And as we check the back, a lot of room in the back seat and a decent trunk. There's some good room in here for stuff. Notice the jumper cables. And as I said, V6 engine, it's very reliable. This one puts out 255 horsepower. Not insane horsepower, but back in 2007, that was still a decent amount, and it's a very zippy car. The problem is, at this age, these things just tend to fall apart. They look great, but it's all a facade. The owner says he's got a clunk on the left front. Let's jack it up, see what's going on there. Find a good jack point. There's one, and up we go. So first we'll look inside. We can see it's wet in here, so the strut's starting to wear. And I can see and feel a ridge, kind of a scalloped ridge. A worn strut can do that, as can worn front end parts. And when I wiggle this back and forth, I can feel there's some play in the power steering rack. So that means the very expensive power steering rack is worn. Eventually that'll need replacing. Again, a brand new one, that'll be more than the car's actually worth. Although that is something you can live with. It's not too bad yet. It's not going clunka. I've had customers drive them years that way. They would just buy new front tires. Maybe every 15,000 miles because they wear out too fast. And as long as they didn't clunk when you pulled on it, you hit a big bump, you hear a clunk up there, they would just live with that. Do not expect perfection if you buy one of these things used with this kind of mileage on it. So let's put it down, take it for a spin. Now, as we can see in the door here, this is a Nissan. It's a Japanese car, but if you notice here, it says manufactured by Nissan Motor Company. This one was actually put together in Tennessee. So let's start it up. It starts right up. Most Japanese cars will. Now, you do have to say it's a pretty quiet car, but if you listen, you can hear the power steering groaning because that's a little worn. But it still works. It does still have the feel of a nice sports sedan. It does still ride pretty good even though the struts are worn. Even though it's old, it still handles decent. And let's see how this thing with 152,000 miles accelerates. On your mark, get set, go! It's still got some decent acceleration. And the transmission still works pretty good. They are made for speed. And even though this one's old, hey, it's still a fun car to drive and it rides pretty good on the highway. If you heard the little talking voice, he's got radar hooked up. Many people who drive these things have radar detectors because they tend to drive fast. That's why they bought the Nissan. That's how they sell these things in the first place. They're fast, they're fun to drive, but as they age like this one, they become endless money pits if you want perfection. Now, if you don't mind a car that's old but still fast, fun to drive, and you don't mind dealing with the hassle of getting this thing inspected because it needs catalytic converters, which cost a fortune, the AC, maybe you got to keep filling it up with refrigerant every once in a while. If you don't mind a car like that, and you can pick up one like this, hey, look, they go for $1,500 to $3,200. They don't cost that much money. But if you're one of those people who just want a car you can just buy and drive and not mess with, this is not the car for you. Because as beautiful as it looks for a 14-year-old car, looks can be deceiving. And in this case, it's hiding a lot of problems. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.